We're sitting here and we are right on the cusp of the big 100-day mark of the second Trump presidency. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to help us make sense of it. How's he doing? What grade would you give him?
Well, I'm slightly allergic to 100 days style things.
I know, is it a very American thing?
Well, no, it's like anniversaries. When we're doing this because it's the 243rd anniversary. But no, it is, of course, a milestone of a kind.
Well, they've certainly been treating it as one, meaning
Yes.
they want to get as much done in the 100 days. And there's been, I think, more executive orders than almost any president, perhaps, since FDR.
Yes, which is an interesting way of doing things and is something that you could see coming. Trump had said this was going to how he's going to do things. I think for me, the interesting thing is always the comparison with Trump 1. Trump 1 was, frankly, a mess. People were in positions who the president didn't seem to, know or rate, and then he had to give them the heave-ho and replace them with other people. And this time round, he's had 4 years to prepare for this. Obviously, he was preparing for it very seriously. He knew who he wanted to surround himself with. He knew he wanted loyalists, crucially, Trump loyalists, and that's what he's done. I'd have said that the fact that there has been so little pandemonium is just worth noting. Some people might think there has been, but really, I mean, it's nothing like it was. It's been pretty orderly. It's been concerted. There have been things that the president has done which seem to have amazed people, like tariffs, most obviously, which I cannot understand why people are amazed by. Because
all he did was talk about how he was going to do it.
Yes. I mean, every time I covered a rally, it's like tariffs were one of the big things he talked about. I don't know whether much of the commentariat class has simply got used to politicians saying they do something and then not doing it. And they're kind of shocked that he's actually doing the things he said he'd do. But he is. I mean, there's only been one major misstep, which was the signal leak, and that wasn't compared to some things that have happened in recent years. That story's now blown over. To my mind, domestically, he's done several of the biggest things he said he'd do. He has stopped almost entirely the illegal movement at the southern border, which is one of the things he was voted in on doing. He has been deporting illegal foreign criminals. That's one of the things he said he'd do. Tariffs, of course. Then on the broader foreign affairs beat, which is what I'm sort of in some ways most interested in at the moment, it's a mixed bag. Mm-hmm. His appointment of Steve Witkoff as the envoy to end all wars is it's an audacious appointment to give any man, I think. I mean, I don't think there's a man or a woman in the universe who could deal with this number of briefs that Witkoff is having to deal with. But what I find interesting and sometimes concerning is the extent to which already Trump's promises on some of the foreign affairs stuff have clearly not been able to be implemented in the way that he promised that they would. Some people will say, well, I mean, it was obviously just campaign rhetoric to say, I'm going to stop X war on day one.
Like the Russia-Ukraine war.
Nevertheless, he did say it. And, 100 days in, the war is still grinding on there. There are still hostages in Gaza, including an American-born hostage. The war is still going on there. The nuclear talks with Iran look like seeping into JCPOA point 2.
Obama's nuclear deal.
The Obama nuclear deal. And so on that, it's on the domestic stuff, I'd say a high score. On the foreign affairs stuff, it's a little early to tell, but it's concerning.
Give us a little bit more of a sense. Let's just stay on the foreign affairs subject for a second. We have run a lot of pieces in the Free Press explaining the sort of, and I'll be crude about it, the two broad camps that are inside the Trump administration on that issue. on certain issues, certain domestic issues, I think the administration speaks with a pretty united voice. But when it comes to foreign policy and the question of muscular foreign policy or pulling back from the world, there's, let's say, a cacophonous debate. And I would say
Yes.
on one side, there's Mike Waltz, former Green Beret. He's the one who is, I would say, of anyone in the administration speaking up most strongly for a kind of stronger hand. And then you have others in the administration. And this was one of the things you saw in that signal leak that was fascinating. You have J.D. Vance and others sort of caucusing with they've rebranded themselves as restrainers. Who's winning in that fight between the restrainers and, I guess, let's say, the hawks?
It's a little early to say, and it seems to go back and forth. We should concede, of course, that this is not only a live debate, but of course it's a very serious one. It's one of the most serious divides going on within the Trump administration, which is, I would say, not just between the hawks and the sort of isolationists, but that's one way to think of it. I mean, it's also between those people in the administration, most obviously J.D. Vance, who really do think that America should withdraw from most of the world and focus its efforts on the only real economic competitor to this country, which is China. And then there are others who say, well, they address that fundamental, what I've said before is a fundamental problem at the heart of the MAGA isolationist wing, which is they simultaneously want America to be the world's dominant power, but they don't want to be involved in the world. This is a very serious problem that at some point they will either address or fail to address. In that signal chat, we saw the vice president saying, he didn't see why America had to keep open the world's water lanes for, the Europeans or whatever. And, there's a perfectly good argument to say, and I've made it for many years now, that the Europeans should step up on defense spending. But at the same time, if America and her allies don't keep open the world's waterways, the Chinese Communist Party would love to have the job, and our friends in Taiwan would be one of the first to suffer from the order that would have been ushered in. I think one other thing, sorry, it was worth touching on that, which is I think there is alarm from some people, particularly American allies. I picked this up recently on visits abroad. I think there is some alarm about the simultaneous softly, shall we say, in regard to Putin in particular, a tolerance of the Kremlin actually not following what the American president has said they should do, like saying they won't attack energy facilities and then promptly attacking them. I think there's concern among America's allies, and again, I mean, the isolationist types can either think this is important or not, and maybe they don't think it's important. But that, at the same time as the beating up on the softness on the Kremlin and the Ayatollahs and Qatar, at the same time as what some of us see as a needless antagonizing of old allies, like obviously most clearly Canada and then Denmark. And I think the Danes are slightly bemused by the fact that what seemed at first almost to be a sort of troll has become apparent policy.
And in the case of Canada, and they're going to the voting booths right now, an election that seemed like it was a sure bet for Poilievre, the conservative, now swinging wildly in Mark Carney's direction, and he's probably going to run away with the results.
Yes, and I mean, seeing Trump say, I don't care, I don't care if Carney wins. I think the lefties are sort of easier to deal with. That has caused some ruptures and ructions elsewhere. So on some of that, and then on that, one of the interesting questions is simply, who is in charge of that policy? Because much of what is happening in Russia, Ukraine, and indeed the Middle East ought to be the brief of Marco Rubio. And he's conspicuously not leading these things. If I was Marco Rubio, I'd be absolutely furious that
That Steve Witkoff
Yeah.
has more authority than he seems to have.
Yes, and the real problem on those things, by the way, and you don't have to be some kind of hawk to think this, is that the real problem on those things is that Trump clearly, his decision to appoint his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to a, let's say, similar role in the post-2016 period, absolutely paid off. I mean, it really worked. And all the people who said, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's just got this son-in-law, this is, what does he know?
The ultimate Nepo baby position.
Right.
And he actually pulled off the Abraham Accords.
He pulled off the Abraham Accords. It was amazing. And all credit to him and his father-in-law for that. But this decision to bring, as it were, another New York real estate guy in as a result, because it did work last time. But this time, it's a little early. I said this in the post the other day. It's disturbing to see somebody learn on the job when the job is this serious. And when Witkoff said recently that he had found that Hamas were not entirely honest interlocutors in the negotiations, some of us did have a rather overwhelming feeling of, it took you how long to work that out? You didn't go in knowing that. Settlement of the Russia-Ukraine war. Think about what it is to have a negotiator who, whatever his other virtues, does not know any of the history of this conflict, going into negotiations with Vladimir Putin, who has his own entirely different view of history, going back, of course, a couple of millennia. That's a problem. It's a problem doing nuclear negotiations if you're just starting off from here, dealing with Tehran, because they will be very, very pleased to be dealing with somebody who does not have their memory.
Let me ask one question on Iran, and then I want to talk about Joe Rogan, and then, of course, your book. On Iran, of course, Trump, in his first administration, scuttled the JCPOA, Obama's nuclear deal. He called it a horrible deal. Marco Rubio said something similar. Now, under the leadership of Steve Witkoff, we ran a piece by Mike Duran the other day talking about how Steve Witkoff is driving the Trump administration on the road to Obama land and how strange that result is. We have a president who loves a good deal, loves deals, hates war, really, really hates war. How are you going to be judging whether or not, first of all, do you think a deal is even possible? Maybe let's start there. And second of all, if a deal is possible, how should those of us watching this with a lot of concern judge whether or not it is indeed a good deal?
I'm actually not very positive about a deal. I think it's highly unlikely that America can get the Ayatollahs to restrain themselves from enrichment. It's their goal. It's been their goal for decades. Now there is talk once again, as in the Obama years, about whether or not the Iranians could have nuclear energy for civilian energy purposes. And I mean, this is excruciating for some of us because we watched this happen before. Whenever the Iranians go that way, then you start to catch them out. Whoopsie, it turned out that our civilian nuclear program, our energy nuclear program, we're just looking into seeing whether or not we can put it on the top of a missile, to sort of exaggerate things. But that's how they act, how they behave. There was something before, just shortly before he died, the late scholar of the Muslim world, Bernard Lewis, at the age of 100 or so, was asked by a friend of mine, what one thing do you wish that the West would know about the Islamic world that it doesn't? And he gave such a brilliant answer. He said, I wish they understood that we in the West think in at longest 4-year cycles. I mean, really, we think in America about 2-year electoral cycles.
Or 100 days, as I began this conversation.
100 days. And he said, I wish people realize that in the Muslim world, a decade is the smallest piece of time that people talk in. So for the mullahs, Witkoff comes, goes, Obama comes, Trump goes, and so on. But the aim remains the same. I think to my mind, that the great challenge for Donald Trump is, I believe he is committed, as he has said, that Iran will not, the Iranian Revolutionary Government will not become a nuclear power on his watch. For me, the question is, but what about after him? It is one thing to say that for the next 3.5 years, or 3 years, 9 months, whatever, they will not get a bomb. That's good news. That's a start. But the bigger thing is, after Trump, there could be another Obama. There could be another Biden. There could be an AOC. There could be anybody. Question for me is he able to make sure they never have the bomb? And that will be one of the things that his legacy will be based on. Not just if it happened on his watch. I think he will not allow that. But will it happen on any future president's watch because of things that happened during his time in office? That's one of the things I'm watching out for.